All right, how are we doing tonight or today? Depends on when you're listening. If you're listening after the fact, welcome. Glad to have you a part of it. First-time listener, welcome as well. Long-time listener, so awesome to have you part of the community. I just wanted to share a couple things. We're going to dive into self-sabotage tonight because I think this is one of the trickiest behaviors that we encounter. Self-sabotage can seem mysterious and complicated, but I think it doesn't really have to be. And, maybe you wonder why, in the case of self-sabotage, you might do something. You might want to do something good or something helpful or something beneficial, but you end up doing something kind of destructive and counterproductive to the goals that you have. And so really that's what I want to address with this episode here is, and what I want you to take away from this one is just kind of that you feel empowered because you can understand not only where self-sabotage comes from, but how you can put it behind you. And so that's really what I want to tackle today. But just quickly, I want to mention a couple things. First of all, if anything that I share with you, if you'd like to get some help with it, some individual personal help, you're always welcome to book a free 15-minute chat with me. Go to freedomnutrition.rocks, that's .rocks/let's chat. Book a free 15-minute chat. You get to talk with me, my wonderful self, and we'll tackle anything that you happen to be struggling with. It's something that I put out there because I think the best way to show that I can help people is to actually help them. I've got an ebook called Crush Your Cravings, so if you'd like to get a copy of that, you can go to freedomnutrition.rocks, again, .rocks/book. Trying to make the link as memorable as possible, freedomnutrition.rocks/book to get a copy of Crush Your Cravings. I'll show you, I'm like, what is my clickbait thing? I'll show you one of the things is like how to sleep your way to better health. So that's in there. That's my clickbait thing for tonight, but Crush Your Cravings, that's where you can get a copy of that. And the last thing is, of course, I have 3 free 7-day challenges. Always a tongue twister to say that one. Anybody who, maybe you're not a place to work with me or hire me as your coach yet in that capacity, I do create these free resources for that reason. I want to give people a chance to just take this information and do something with it. So the 3 challenges are End Emotional Eating. That's one of them. Fat Loss Fundamentals is another one. And the third one is called Build Your Roadmap, which teaches you from, I think actually there's probably a great, if I was going to do them in sequence, I would do 7-day End Emotional Eating first, and then I would do Fat Loss Fundamentals, and then I would do Build Your Roadmap. That'd be how I do that. So with that underway, let's talk about self-sabotage tonight. So first question is, have you ever struggled with self-sabotage? And if so, could you identify any patterns or behaviors that you might pick up on in kind of your own experience? And I'll share a bit of a story for my own experience here. And that is, in my efforts to get healthy, to lose weight, I would often look to what I would call a first day. So whether it's Monday, first day of the month, the big one, which is New Year's, I liked the idea of a clean slate or like a fresh start. And it's like, okay, so what do we do with that fresh start? Well, for me, I would, I'd make these plans. I get this huge surge of motivation, and I have an explanation for why our brain does this, but I'm going to save that for a different episode. But I get this huge surge in motivation. All right, I'm going to throw out all the food in my pantry. Not all the food, all the junk food in my pantry. Let's clarify. And, here's this perfect month of activity that I've planned. But the thing is, whenever I would make these big plans, they're usually at a peak in this big wave of motivation. And so the erroneous kind of, assumption that I would make is that this motivation that I feel is going to be strong enough to carry me through. And in truth, it's not. And inevitably, at some point in time, it's going to come crashing down on the other side. And that's when these self-sabotaging behaviors start to creep in. I'd say things like, well, I always do this. I start out strong and then I don't know what happens. And legitimately, I was puzzled by, these behavior patterns that seem to play out on repeat, and I couldn't seem to figure out why. And so, it became something that I was determined to try to understand. And so, in your past experience, just thinking about this in efforts to get healthy, what has it been like for you? And this is, I guess I'm asking a reflective question. What has it been like for you to attempt or to lose weight and try to create healthy change? What's that been like for you? What has your experience been? I think it'd be most helpful here to just kind of share what is really a simple definition of self-sabotage. And I wonder if in your experience, in your attempts to create health and maybe weight loss and things like that, if you have basically if you struggled with self-sabotage. So really, and actually I'd like to ask as well, when you hear self-sabotage, how would you describe it? What comes to mind for you when you hear this term self-sabotage? And I ask that question because I kind of feel like we have a couple of different, ideas floating around about that. And I'm going to share obviously my ideas around it too. So hopefully we end up on the same page. And so I'll share with you my, simple definition of self-sabotage. And then I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of what that might look like to kind of help you practically identify it. And then to put it all together, I want to share with you the step-by-step process that can help you to correct self-sabotage. And so, self-sabotage is one of those terms that you hear, it gets thrown around a lot. But understanding what people actually mean by it is kind of tricky, in part because maybe a lot of people don't really know what it means. It's just kind of we give this sort of blanket explanation trying to understand our behavior. And so there's some people that might use it judgmentally. They might use it like a type of criticism if they think of somebody as weak or lazy. Or maybe we just talk about it in a way that's so general and vague that it's essentially meaningless. So here's my definition of what self-sabotage is. Self-sabotage is when we undermine our own efforts, our own goals and values. In other words, we acknowledge there's something out there that we genuinely want and we believe is good for us. For example, I want to not just lose the weight, but I want to keep the weight off that I worked hard to lose. But then do something that's in conflict with what we want. So it could be like late night fast food runs, eating junk food at night. So what's also interesting about this is that self-sabotaging behaviors can be both conscious or unconscious, depending on how aware we are of them. And so conscious self-sabotage would be when we're aware of the fact that what we're doing is undermining our goals or our values, i.e., knowing that I want to exercise, but deciding to watch, Netflix instead. Whereas unconscious self-sabotage is when we do something that undermines our values and our desires, but we don't really realize it until after the fact. So maybe we're afraid, for example, that our new healthy lifestyle might mean that we lose our friends. We might then skip exercise sessions or choose to eat unhealthy foods, at social gatherings as a compensation mechanism, trying to hold on to those relationships that we have. So the two most common forms of self-sabotage, there we go, that I encounter are procrastination would be the first one. And, let's ask this question. If you're procrastinating on doing something, what do you typically do instead? How do you procrastinate? And I think procrastination is probably one of the most universal forms of self-sabotage because it is, like by definition, delaying something, even though we know it would be better not to, or it would be better for us to do that. So I'd be curious for you to just, if you're procrastinating, what do you do to procrastinate? What is your procrastination pattern? And the second one is actually stress eating. And so we could ask this question: if you stress eat, what do you find yourself reaching for? What's the food that, really tickles your fancy? I just wanted to say tickles your fancy. Like in reality, many people turn to food as a way to deal with stress and anxiety in their lives because it temporarily makes us feel good and it distracts from our pain. But we know that in the long run, it's sabotaging important values like maintaining a healthy diet or being physically fit. And so this is kind of where self-sabotage is tricky, And so here's the thought though. And maybe this is a different way of thinking about it. Because I feel like, we might look at this and go, well, shoot, what can I do about this? It's just like something that I do. I want to reframe how we think about self-sabotage. So I want you to think about, what if self-sabotage was serving a purpose? And that might seem like a counterintuitive question to ask. Like, what if self-sabotage was serving a purpose? And let's ask that question. Like, what might self-sabotage actually be doing for us? On the surface, we could say, well, it's ruining my efforts to get healthy. But in truth, it's serving a purpose, right? And so along the way here, I'm going to share a 5-step process about how we can actually actively, remove self-sabotage from our life. And this is really the first step of it that I've already kind of jumped ahead of myself. And that is understanding the need that your self-sabotage fills. So in other words, we can't make progress on self-sabotage until we first understand why we do it. And why we do it is not because we're weak or a failure or dumb or anything like that. So we have to take a step back from judging ourselves, because let's say most people who would like to stop self-sabotaging, they'll make this mistake of approaching it with, I got to get tough on myself, that kind of attitude. And, this is the time that I'm finally going to get my stuff together. I'm going to stop all of this nonsense. The thing is, being tough on ourselves is actually, ironically, in and of itself, a form of self-sabotage, because although it feels good in the moment, I'm doing something, I'm back in control, it actually causes us to miss the most important step, the first step in overcoming self-sabotage, and that is understanding what need the self-sabotaging behavior feeds. So we can't do that without some self-compassion. So before we commit to changing, before we commit to the change that's necessary to sort of break this pattern of self-sabotage, we have to recognize that self-sabotage serves a purpose. There is a reason why we're doing it. And in order to get to that reason, we have to let go of judgment about kind of like these negative feelings we have towards ourselves. So if we can understand that it's serving a function, then at least in a limited sense, it kind of makes sense that we do this, even if it's not ideal. So for example, let's say we want to stop stress eating. Well, first of all, we need to compassionately see how stress eating works. And I'll say works in air quotes, right? Stress eating works to make us feel less stressed. If we want to stop procrastinating, we have to compassionately understand that procrastination is maybe helping us avoid our fear of failure. So when we understand the need that our self-sabotage is filling, then we'll be able to cultivate alternative behaviors to fill that need. And it's only when we get that need met in another way that we're able to break free from self-sabotage for good. And so we're talking maybe a little bit about alternative behaviors that we could do. And so this is kind of like step 2 in this process. So figure out or identify what are alternative healthy behaviors that meet that need. And I'm going to give you some examples here, but maybe something to think about again here is what are some healthy maybe behavior swaps that you've tried in the past? And maybe we don't use behavior swap all that commonly in like our language, but it's like once we have this idea, this understanding of what need our self-sabotage fills, the next step is to come up with some alternative behaviors that address the need, because it's important that we address that need, but in a way that doesn't also hurt us. So sometimes even just getting clear on what the underlying need is that causes us to self-sabotage might trigger some ideas for alternative behaviors. So for example, if stress eating is a problem, maybe we want to go for a walk. If procrastination is a problem, well, maybe we put some sort of internet controls on Netflix or something like that, get comfortable with kind of confronting these uncomfortable feelings. So number two, step 2 is this idea that we want to identify what are some alternative behaviors that we can potentially utilize or employ to meet that need that the self-sabotaging behavior was meeting. Now, it's all it's all well and good, really working on my words tonight. It's all well and good to say these kinds of things. But the thing is, life doesn't go perfectly. I think maybe it's kind of cliche to say that. But we want to be able to then anticipate and plan for obstacles. Expect that the best laid plans that we have are still going to get disrupted in some way. And so we want to ask ourselves, well, what are some obstacles that might interfere with our plans to get healthy, right? And so let's say we've identified the underlying need. We've got a healthier set of behaviors. So now we've come up with some alternative like behavior swaps, some things that we can do instead that still meet that need. But we still need to anticipate or plan for that there's going to be some potential obstacles to using these new behaviors. So for example, if our alternative behavior to stress eating after work is to have a small healthy snack instead of binging on junk food, what could get in the way of that new behavior? Well, what if we don't have enough of the healthy snack stocked up in our house? What if we're invited out for drinks with our coworkers? What if our spouse or partner just took out a tray of freshly baked cookies the minute we walk in the door? It's easy to stick to new behaviors and good intentions when the conditions are right. But if we want to eliminate self-sabotage for good, we kind of need a plan for when times are challenging. And so I'll give you a couple of examples here of anticipating obstacles and developing a plan for addressing them. So for example, if you want to make sure that you always have healthy snacks available after work instead of junk food, maybe you set a recurring order. So let's say maybe it's almonds. Set a recurring order of almonds or whatever from your online retailer like Amazon, so that you know that you're always going to have some healthy snacks on hand at home. Maybe if we want to call a friend to address feelings of loneliness that lead us to eat, loneliness eating. Instead of emotional eating, well, okay, we want to make sure that we have a list of 2 or 3 friends that we can call in case one's not available. If we want to take a break and go for a walk for 20 minutes to maybe address a difficulty with procrastination instead of playing games on our phone, because, that's one of the ways we probably procrastinate, well, maybe we remove those games from our phone. So it's good to have it's a great start, in other words, to have alternative behaviors to self-sabotage. So we figure out what need is being met. We figure out an alternative behavior to meet that need, but then we plan for obstacles, right? So what we're really talking about here is just building a contingency plan. So the fourth thing, really the fourth step in this process, is to boost our tolerance for uncomfortable feelings. And so we could ask that question, well, how well do you feel like you are able to tolerate uncomfortable feelings or uncomfortable emotions? Because no matter how well we strategize with our new, say, alternative behaviors, it's going to be emotionally uncomfortable at times. So let's say even if we have those healthy almonds in reach, it still hurts a little to give up the chips, Even if we go for that walk or get back to work instead of playing video games, we're still going to miss the video games, right? So letting go of self-sabotage isn't just a challenge with planning and strategy. It's also partly emotional tolerance. So in order to form any new set of behaviors or habits, we do have to be able to tolerate some discomfort. And especially true in the case of emotional discomfort. So, and this is very true in the case of replacing self-sabotaging behaviors with alternative healthy behaviors. And the best way to practice building up our emotional tolerance is to start small. So for example, let's say you get a bit impatient in the line at the grocery store. The person in front of you, they're taking forever. Well, maybe your default behavior is to grab your phone and just start, distracting yourself on your phone to escape that feeling of frustration or impatience. Well, maybe instead of immediately doing that, you tolerate it for a little bit of time, right? So instead of immediately pulling out your phone and browsing, social media as soon as you feel frustrated, practice doing nothing and let yourself feel that impatience or feel that frustration for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. What you're doing in this is you're actually building up your tolerance for an uncomfortable emotion where you don't feel so strongly that you have to erase it or make it go away. So if you can do this in one area of your life, there is some crossover to other areas of your life, And so you could think about what are some ways that I could basically expose myself or situations where I have uncomfortable emotions. Is there ways that I can basically be exposed to them and tolerate them for a period of time? And the last thing I want to touch on here is just clarifying our values or clarifying what's important. So really it's what is the deeper reason that you want to get healthy? At the heart of all of this, what's the deeper reason that you want to get healthy? Because maybe this isn't the most necessary step in letting go of self-sabotage, but it's definitely the most powerful. So when we clarify what is important to us, when we clarify our values, the things that really truly matter to us in life, and then we connect that to our new healthier behaviors, it's actually a lot easier for them to take root and to grow and to develop. So if swapping almonds, chips for almonds, that is connected to, let's say, well, here's one. I want to be healthy for my son. I love this little boy. He's the most beautiful little boy in the world. I'm not biased at all. He's incredible. I love him to pieces. And I want to be present and physically present in his life. I love running after him and chasing him and scooping him up and tickling him and wrestling and playing, just doing boy things, Well, if I can connect my healthy behavior to something like my love for my son and being able to be active and present in his life, it's far more likely to stick than if I don't have a valid sort of emotional reason for this. So let's just tie all of this together really quickly. Pardon me, because I've covered quite a bit here, but this 5-step process really for stopping self-sabotage. And the first thing here, again, is really figure out what is the need that your self-sabotage fills. So instead of saying, I'm a bad person for doing this, get curious. Let go of judgment and you get curious and you go, there's a reason I'm doing this and I want to understand why. And it's probably not because I'm just lazy or have no willpower or discipline. So let's figure out what that reason is. The second one would be to figure out what are some alternative behaviors that fill that need. So if that need is not going to go away, how can we meet that need in a different way? That's really, really important. Now, Okay, we come up with some alternative behaviors. Fantastic. That's a great next step. But we have to anticipate and plan for obstacles, right? So we have to expect that at some point in time, this is going to get challenged. Okay, so we anticipate, we plan for obstacles. And then the other thing that we know is basically a guarantee is we're going to get exposed to uncomfortable feelings. And so we want to start to develop tolerance to having uncomfortable feelings. And lastly, just clarify what we value the most. Get clear on why this matters to us. I like to call this our emotionally compelling reason. Why does this mean something to me? And when we get clear on that, then making these behavior swaps takes on a different meaning. It's not because I have to, because I'm forced to. I want to because this behavior is connected to this deeper purpose in my life. So I hope you find that helpful. That's really my 5-step process for breaking free from self-sabotage. And if you found it helpful, of course, please feel free to let me know. And once again, if I've shared something here, I'll share this one last time. If I've shared something in this episode, you feel like, hey, you know what, this is helpful, but I could use a bit more help with it. Phenomenal. You're welcome to go to this link, freedomnutrition.rocks. So freedomnutrition.rocks/let's chat. We can connect on a 15-minute chat. We can help you break through some of these obstacles, help you map out what might this look like for you personally in your life. So I'd love to be able to help you in that way. So, once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you found this really, really helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.